Hello and welcome to Acupuncture Professional. My name's Kath Berry and I was very fortunate to be able to interview Charlotte Whitestone, who's the founder of the Association of Community and Multibed Acupuncture Clinics. In this interview, Charlotte shares with us the reasons why she set up ACMAC and also her vision for the community multibed movement in the United Kingdom and across the world. We do hope you enjoy this interview. So I start by asking Charlotte, what inspired you to set up ACMAC?
I was inspired to set up ACMAC because I found myself working at the first multi-bed clinic in the UK, and really good things were happening there, and a handful of new clinics also opened up around the country, and I just had a sense that this was a movement in the making and it really deserved to be documented. And I also figured out that if we encouraged each other and worked together, we would become stronger as a movement. So we set up the website and did some teaching, and there are now over 60 multi-bed clinics in the UK, and I don't think there would be that many if we weren't all, part of something together.
Excellent. And so what were the things you were seeing that made you realise this was a movement?
The things I was seeing that made me realise this was a movement it was just a sea change. If we're thinking in TCM terms, I think there was some stagnant chi in the acupuncture profession in the UK, and this seemed like something new and vibrant and dynamic that just sort of opened up some new energy. There were a lot of practitioners coming out of college and they were struggling to make a living. So, I'm not pretending that this is going to make anybody rich, but at least it's a new way of trying to create your business and trying to create clinics. So there was that, and just the practitioners that I saw practicing this way were having a really good time. I think a lot of them had felt very isolated, practicing in little one-to-one rooms all the time, and all of a sudden they were working in big busy clinics and going to work was fun. And obviously the patients were just delighted because they were able to access really high quality treatment at affordable prices. I think they really couldn't believe their luck. So all round it was great.
And could you describe the setup of the clinic in terms of how many beds there were?
The setup of the Dragon, we had two premises while I was working there, and they've since moved to another premises. So somewhere around 6 beds. I think at our busiest time we had 9 beds. We used beds or couches rather than recliners. It's just the way it happened over here, and there would usually be 2 or 3 practitioners working. And the interesting thing that we discovered was that the busier the clinic was, the calmer it felt. You'd kind of get this sort of hubbub, this gentle hubbub of noise and energy, but it was very delicate. So we really looked forward to our fully booked days.
And what were some of the advantages of practitioners working in a team?
Well, for me, some of the advantages of working in a team are constant CPD, so you're just watching and learning from your team members all the time, which I've learned more doing that than I have reading any books since I've graduated, and that's wonderful. I'm not lonely when I go to work. It's fun. I have buddies, and at a quiet moment we can have a cup of tea and talk about what we did at the weekend, or a really difficult treatment, and that's really useful. It's really useful to have that support at difficult times, and also for doing those jobs that some of us don't like to do, like marketing and the difficult stuff. There's a healthy bit of peer pressure, so we all kick each other up a bit so that we get it done.
And what would be some of the disadvantages of working in an open environment like that?
Personally, I can't think of many. The big disadvantage as far as patients are concerned is obvious. There are decreases in the availability of privacy. And it's true to say that some patients don't like that. Some patients do prefer to be treated one-to-one, and they come to multi-bed clinics because that's what they can afford. On the other hand, I think there are loads of patients who come to multi-bed clinics because they really enjoy that environment, and they can also feel this sort of buzzing energy that you get in the space. And I just think if we as practitioners really constantly put ourselves in the shoes of our patients, and we mustn't forget to constantly reevaluate how our patients are doing, And so long as we do that, I think we can make the space very safe and very, really protecting people's dignity. So,
And has there ever been a time where you've had criticism from other acupuncturists about lowering the price or the standard or quality of acupuncture?
As far as criticism from other acupuncturists who are working one-to-one is concerned, I've never once had that levied at me personally. But I speak with the British Acupuncture Council on a regular basis, and they're the ones who hear that some one-to-one practitioners are unhappy.
And what are their concerns?
They're concerned that we're taking away their patients, which I can understand. I think this is more of a problem now because the economic circumstances we're all in are very challenging, and some one-to-one practitioners are saying that they've noticed their patient numbers drop by 20 or 25%. The interesting thing is, when I speak to a lot of multibed people, guess what? Their numbers have dropped 20 to 25%. So I think there are enough patients for everybody. What I hope is that by bringing patients into the world of acupuncture who wouldn't be able to afford one-to-one, we're just generally increasing our patient base. I think some patients who come to multibed clinics may realise, you know what, I'd rather have one-to-one treatment. So hopefully the patients move both ways. The other thing is, I do have sympathy for that argument, but I think there's another argument, which is, if the only cars available to drive were Bentleys, what kind of a world would we be living in, So I'm really passionate that there should be high quality services available to people at as low rates as possible. So it's a tricky one.
Do you think there's a particular condition that predisposes, in terms of, are you seeing a lot of musculoskeletal stuff or anything? Are there common patterns that people have, or is it you're seeing a really cross spectrum of?
As far as what conditions we treat, there seems to be this belief that what we're going to get in multibed clinics is musculoskeletal, and that's not my experience at all. I hardly ever treat back pain, but I'm wondering if that's the fact that different practitioners attract different stuff rather than different types of clinics, because I certainly know practitioners in multi-bed clinics who really enjoy treating musculoskeletal stuff, and that's what they attract. Actually, I treat a lot of really complex conditions and a lot of anxiety and depression, some really tricky stuff, and my experience is that people are happy to talk about complex and difficult stuff, usually in the big room. If they're not, we go and find a quiet corner, or we use the private room. So yeah, I think I'm treating a very wide range of complaints, and that suits me.
Excellent. So what would be the top 3 advantages and then the top 3 disadvantages, do you think, of a multi-bed setup?
Top 3 advantages. Firstly, for me, working in a team. The caveat to that is there's no point having 2 or 3 practitioners if you have enough patients for one. So you need to really be careful of that. But for me, I always work in clinics where there's at least 2 practitioners, and I just love it. It's wonderful. The second thing, realistic prognosis for patients. I feel much more able to say, I want to treat you twice a week for the next 6 weeks. It would be more difficult. It's not impossible, but more difficult to do that if I was, charging 40 quid a pop. Another advantage is that simply by treating more patients, obviously you get better at your trade more quickly. Certainly, I know this is something that the regulatory body in the UK has to think about, is how many patients do we need to be treating in order to be considered to be, competent practitioners, and they've yet to actually put a number on that. But nobody is denying that if you're treating 20 or 30 a week, or 40 or 50 a week, you're going to end up being a better practitioner than if you're treating 2 or 3. So that's a biggie. Yeah.
And the disadvantages?
Disadvantages to multi-bed practice. Well, I'm a multi-bed geek, so I can't really think of any. Like I said, don't work in a team of 2, 3, 4, 5 people if you only, if you live in a really small town and you only have enough patients for one person. Don't shoot yourself in the foot that way, because sitting in an empty clinic is just awful, and it's soul destroying. Another disadvantage could be, it is a disadvantage, you are limited to what types of treatment you can do, and generally I stick to needling. You have to be pretty careful using Moxa because you need to be in attendance to that patient. Sometimes I use cups, but even with that you need to be pretty careful. I don't use fine Moxa work, and to an extent I miss that. So that's an issue. I'm not a purist. I'd rather give a treatment that is 90% successful to 90% of the people that need that treatment. I think you can be the most wonderfully trained practitioner using the most fantastic techniques, and if somebody can't come to see you because they can't afford it, you're never going to be able to help them. So there's a certain amount of give and take there, but it is a disadvantage.
Are you ever self-conscious as a practitioner that what you're saying is being heard by a whole group of people?
I think that's a really interesting one, and I know that counsellors or psychotherapists, this is something that they bring up a lot. I'm not sure I agree. I think it's a really complex issue. I think if you're putting on a persona in clinic that perhaps isn't 100% you, then obviously if you meet a patient outside of clinic, you have to remember to be that persona again, and I think that's dangerous, personally. So I just try to be myself with my patients.
What if you're just in persona with different patients, which can sometimes happen?
That can sometimes happen. I just think you need to keep an eye on it and stay real.
Okay.
Because I think if you fall into that trap too much, you're going to end up losing a lot of energy anyway. Even if you're in clinic and you're being one thing for one patient and one thing for another. I know obviously, we're taught to match patients, and particularly the 5 Elements school would really encourage doing that, but I think you can be on a swift route to just fraudulence and just exhausting your own energy, whereas I think the more you can stay real and stay centred, then those problems tend to diminish. I guess they don't go completely, I remember Callum saying, bumping into patients at parties.
In sort of summary now, what would be your key message for somebody setting this up?
Having worked in a few clinics, some of which have worked better than others, so my advice to somebody setting up would be to do a business plan, which is something I've never personally done because I just get terribly excited and find a room and buy some couches and there you go, there's a clinic. I would say, sit down, do all the things that the books say, do a little bit of market research, figure out who your patient groups are going to be, figure out how many patients you need to bring in enough money to make you feel that there's an equal balance, give an exchange in your energy, what you're giving and what you're getting. It sounds so dull, doesn't it? But it's so important because I have experience working in a clinic and we didn't have enough patients, and it's mortifying. It's really horrible. So crunch some numbers, do a spreadsheet, write on the back of a napkin, whatever it takes. Find a space that's visible. So once again, I've worked in clinics where you're using a room in a community centre, something that's away from the street, and it's okay. But if you can have some big presence on a busy street somewhere, your marketing is done, basically, and you become part of the community. So this clinic we're in now has a big double shop front with a big sign saying, the Acupuncture Clinic. And we're busy, and we're always busy, and it's great. So, not everybody's rich enough to set up a clinic like that, but somewhere where you can be visible is really important. Just the third thing would be, figure out who your team is going to be, whether or not you decide to work by yourself, which is fine. Lots of multi-bed clinics in the UK are with single practitioners, and that's great. But, if you're going to do a team, then work with somebody that you cannot wait to go and have your next cup of tea with, so that you're really excited about going to work, and so that you can encourage each other to do the work that needs to be done to keep your business running. My main message to you is that ACMAC has been a success because it's brought people together. There are now more than 60 clinics in the UK. There's more than 100, I think, in the USA, and it sounds like there's quite a few in Australia as well. So I would really urge you to come together, work together, network, encourage each other, blog, whatever it takes, just to create your own movement with the support of ACMAC or POCA, or maybe we'll end up all working together. So have a great afternoon. I wish you all well.